Hey guys! So I figured since I'm in the kitchen today, getting things ready for my dad's birthday party slash Owen's 8th grade graduation party, I figured since I'm in here cooking anyway, why not show you what I'm cooking? When I got married, my mom had this genius idea because, I had so many people throwing showers for me. And so for all of my friends that threw me showers, my mom decided to host a cooking class as my hostess gift. So instead of, giving everybody some little trinket or candle or a crystal bowl as a thank you for throwing a shower, instead I gave everybody an invitation to come take a cooking class with me. This friend of my mom's, her name is Dot. She had this cooking class in her home. So when we got there, we all had the recipes for all the items that we'd be cooking that day, as well as the important utensils that we'd be using. So for that class, because I actually took a few of them from her, I believe I got tongs from that first class, which if you've watched any of my other videos, you know how much I love a good pair of tongs. What was so great about this class, because we were all young and, freshly out of college or just finishing college in my case. And this was one of those classes that I really think that every young adult should take, men and women alike. So the whole purpose of this class was to teach us how to plan out a menu and how to execute that menu. Because one of the hardest things when you first start cooking is figuring out the timing of when should you prepare, each item so that everything is hot and fresh when it gets to the table. And that is a skill. Like, that's not something that you think about very often when you're first starting out cooking. Like, it's one of those things that, I don't know, I just hadn't heard of anybody else talking about that and how important that is, that you really everything has to be done at a certain time. So for her class, when she gave us our recipe cards, she had us number them in the order in which we were to prepare them. So the very first thing that we made that day were the scalloped potatoes. And the reason is because they took, of course, longer to cook than any of the other items. For this recipe, she actually suggested 4 medium potatoes, but I really love the Idaho Gold potatoes. I just feel like they're so creamy and good. And since these are pretty small potatoes anyway, I am going to be using 6 of these. You can leave the skin on them, especially these, because the skin is so thin, but I have some pickier eaters, so we're going to peel this. Now, once you've peeled your potatoes, you're going to need to get 2 small onions and slice those thinly. All right, so she actually recommended cutting these into rings, and I am not a big fan of the rings, mainly because when you go for a bite of the potato and the onion, I felt like the rings were just a little too much onion. So I just peel my onion, cut it in half, and then I'm going to slice it thinly across so that we just have, they're just semicircles this way. So when we were first married, we lived in our amazing little apartment, and it actually had an attic fan. So for those of you who are familiar, you could open all the windows and turn that attic fan on, and it just made the most glorious breeze. And so we had a lot of good memories in that first apartment. But our very first Valentine's dinner as a married couple was in that apartment, and we invited Corey's parents and my parents over for dinner, and I made this meal. And so I was so proud of myself because, I'd learned how to do it in the proper order. And so I decided I knew how to make this meal and I knew how to do it right. And so we had them over. And it's funny, so when growing up, Valentine's dinner was the one meal at our house that was formal. Every year, my mom would put out the fine china, she would put out the crystal and the silver, and we would get dressed up and we would sit down and have this really fancy dinner. She would say every year, "Do you remember why we have this nice formal dinner?" We'd say, "Yes, Mom, just in case we're ever invited to the White House, we'll know what to do." And so that was the dinner where we worked on our manners. We had to properly set the table, which since we only did it once a year, we had to have a lot of refreshers. We learned about all the different types of silverware that you're supposed to use and in what order. But it was a lot of fun and I love doing it. And I wish I could say that, well, I have not kept the Valentine's tradition, but we do now have our formal dinner for New Year's. So that's what we do for New Year's Eve in our household, is we do a nice formal dinner. We grill steaks and when we usually have a couple friends over, and that's when I'll pull out the china and the crystal and the silver, and we'll do the whole shebang. But these potatoes are always on that menu because they are that good. Now the menu calls for 2 small onions. I had 2 medium-sized onions, and now that I've cut it up, I think that I'm just going to use 1 medium-sized onion instead of 2. My mom is not a huge onion fan, and neither is Owen really, so that's okay. We'll do 1 medium-sized onion for this one, and I'll put this one back, and then I'm going to slice up my potatoes. So for the onions, I slice them super thin. I mean, you can almost see through these guys, and then you're just going to pull it all apart and then set that to the side. Our potatoes, you're going to do 1/8 of an inch thick. That is what Dot told me to do. She said 1/8 of an inch thick. I will be honest with you. I have no idea how thick 1/8 of an inch is, nor do I have any way of measuring 1/8 of an inch easily on my cutting board. So what I've always done is guess. I just look at it, I eyeball it, and I say, oh, that looks like that could possibly be 1/8 of an inch. Just slice them thin. And when I say thin, I'll show you what I mean. Thin. That is thin. If you go too much thicker than that, it's going to have too much bite and it's going to take forever to cook. So you're going to want these as thin as possible without being potato chip thin. You know, you don't want it to be so thin that there's just nothing left of your potato when it cooks. But you also don't want it so thick that your potato is crunchy because it didn't cook long enough. And don't panic if these don't look exactly the same width. I mean, you're eyeballing this, so it's okay. It'll be fine. Now, if you have a mandolin, this will go a whole lot faster, and you can really control the slices of your potatoes. I think I do have one. I just don't feel like getting it out. And it's kind of a pain to clean, so I'm going to stick with my good old chef's knife. Okay, so I have chopped my onions and my potatoes, and so now it is time to grate my 8 ounces of mild cheddar cheese. Now, one thing that Dot also told me is that it is always better to grate your own cheese, especially because shredded cheese does not tend to melt as well. I think it's something in the coating that they put on it to keep it from sticking together. That's why it's always really important to grate your own cheese for recipes like this. Okay, so now it is time to get our white sauce going. So next thing you're gonna need is half a stick of butter, and we're just gonna melt that in a pot on low. Okay, so I've melted half of a stick of butter, and I'm going to add in 1/4 of a cup of flour, and I'm just gonna stir this and just kind of let this cook for about a minute. Make sure you get rid of all those clumps. You're gonna stir constantly so that it doesn't burn. Now I'm gonna gradually stir in 2 cups of milk. Just going to increase this heat to medium heat, and I'm just going to stir this constantly until thickened and bubbly. Now this is one of those things that you can't just think, oh, this is so thin, it's going to take forever, I'm just going to walk away and leave it. It will burn on the bottom of the pan. Don't do it. It also thickens all of a sudden just out of nowhere. So just as you're sitting here thinking, oh, this thing is never going to get thick enough, it's going to happen. Right before your eyes, all of a sudden you're going to go from liquid to a thick, white, creamy sauce. So don't think that all of a sudden you can go fold a load of laundry or read a book or paint your nails. It's not the time. I'm still stirring. Still stirring. Oh, hey. Yeah, I'm just stirring. It's starting to thicken up, and it's starting to bubble. I told you guys, it goes from pure liquid to all of a sudden, look at that. Now we're going to stir in 1 teaspoon of salt. Now you're just going to add some fresh cracked pepper. Dot recommended doing white pepper, I think, so it doesn't show up. I don't mind seeing pepper in things, so I'm using what I've got. All right, so now all we have to do is assemble all of our ingredients and then stick it into the oven. Now you're gonna need to get a 9x13 pan. And I always just start with a little bit of this cream sauce on the bottom. And I just spread it around. So now we're just gonna build up layers, and I am just gonna place my potatoes just slightly overlapping each other. So here is my potato layer. Now I'm going to do my onions and just sprinkle these out over those potatoes. So then I take this and just drizzle the sauce over the potatoes and the onions. And I don't do it to cover everything. As this all bakes down, this will kind of all blend together. Now it looks like this. Take some of that freshly grated cheese, sprinkle that on top. And then that's layer one. So now from here, what I'm going to do is just start over again. Potatoes, onions, cream sauce, cheese. And keep going up until I fill up this pan. Preheat your oven to 350, put this in for 50 to 60 minutes. I always check mine at 50 minutes just to see if it's ready. It should be bubbly, a little golden brown on the top. If you really want to see how it feels, take a fork and just find a little section and stick it through. See how it goes through those potatoes. It goes through quickly, they're good to go. So while the potatoes cook, I'm going to ice my cupcakes. So I made these yesterday, which I shared in one of my shorts, the recipe for this. They're so good. But I'm going to ice these with the buttercream that I have. And I'm so excited because now that I've done my baking cabinet, I know where everything is. If you have not seen my video on my baking cabinet, I will link that up above. But I turned this Facebook resale find into my dream baking cabinet, which Jack has already taken a crayon to. That's okay, we're gonna clean that up. All right, so now I need to find what kind of tip that I want for these. What do y'all think? Should we do star? We'll do the star. Now, if you prefer homemade buttercream, I do have a video on decorating a cake for my mom where I show you how to make your own buttercream icing, which is really, really delicious. But I am a huge fan of the Scalloped buttercream. It is really good, and it's also great when you're a little bit of a time crunch. So what I'm gonna do, super simple for these cupcakes. Take this little tip, cut through. You wanna make sure you don't cut it so wide that this falls through. I'm gonna take my piping bag, and I'm just gonna drop this down in there. Hopefully I have cut it wide enough. If not, you can always cut more, but you can't put it back. Yeah, we're gonna need to go a little bit wider on that cut. All right, so what I do, so see I didn't get to the very end. What I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna pull this back a little bit. And I'm just gonna cut again. And then this will come to the very end. To fill this, because this can be a bit of a pain, I'm just gonna roll this top part, and then I always get my giant Tervis tumbler, stick that in here, and I'll bend this up like this and stick that down into the cup, and then you're gonna roll the sides down the cup. I'm gonna take big chunks of this icing and just stick it down in the cup, and then I can scrape along the side of that cup. All right, so this is enough, a nice manageable, workable amount. If you needed more, you could definitely add more. So what I'm gonna do now is I have these little rubber bands. I'll put everything that I'm using today in the description below, along with the recipe to the potatoes and the link to this icing I'm gonna use this little rubber band, and I love these rubber bands so much because it has a little tab right there, and you just loop it over like that. So it's so much easier to get that on than having to wrap, and then unwrap, wrap. This is just so much faster. So I'll pull this up. You'll see this down here, and I just need to work my icing down into that tip, and we're ready to get going. I always buy one of these little cupcake storage boxes because it's just easier to transport everything. And then I bake the day before so that everything is nice and cool. And then I'm just gonna go in here and ice these very, very simply. Sometimes I will pick them up, but for the most part, if I'm going super easy with what I'm doing, I am just gonna ice them while they're in here so that I don't have to like touch them while they're wet and stick them into this container. So I'm just gonna start in the middle, make my way around, and then make my way back to the middle, and then lift. Super easy. For these guys, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to start from the middle, but I'm going to work my way out, and then I'm going to lift up. So work my way out and lift up. That one got messy. Work my way out and lift up. Now the reason that I'm doing some flat and some with a little peak is because we're actually celebrating my dad's birthday, my mother-in-law's birthday, and my son's graduation. So I have different types of cupcake toppers to go on the different cupcakes. And for my dad's, I'm going to be putting sprinkles on these because I'm doing kind of a golf theme. And so I need these to be able to be flattened. It's so annoying. I have 2 cupcakes left and I just ran out of icing. Now, if this were my mom's birthday, she would be fine if I just wrapped a tub of that icing from Celebakes and just put a bow on it. She loves that. She could sit there with a spoon and eat that icing. It's her favorite. Okay, so for my dad's cupcakes, he is a huge golf fan. I'm gonna use the Celebakes lime green jimmies. And then I'm going to, see, I said that I was gonna put these down so I don't have to grab them, but for these, I actually do need to place these down. So I'm actually gonna take this and I'm going to press it into the icing and pull it back up. Now, the reason that I'm doing this is because I got these little golf balls that I'm going to stick right into the middle like that. So I got the golf ball in the grass. For those of you wondering, wait a second, I thought I was watching a video on potatoes. You are. We're still making the potatoes. They're just in the oven right now. So I figured I'd show you guys what else I was doing. And I've got all of these at a local shop, but I know you can buy them online as well. I love supporting my local businesses. All right, the rest of these are going to be so much easier to decorate. Oh, I forgot. I have to add my favorite thing. So, my dad used to love Schlitz beer back in the day. So for his cupcake, we'll do it on this one. I found Schlitz cupcake toppers, which I cannot believe. Let's do those here. It's just too funny. These are just simple little cupcake toppers. Congrats, grad. A little graduation hat. All right. This is another reason to get this. Look, all of my little decorations fit perfectly in that box, so we're good. Y'all, oh my goodness. Hello, gorgeous. That looks so good. Woo, look at this spread. All right, here we go.
Yummy in the tummy.
These are super hot. Does it feel? It feels like New Year's Eve.
So hot, guys.
Except I have 2 steaks.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh man,
What you need, Rick?
I was going to fix it. Corey was wanting some.
those potatoes are so good.
Hit me with some potato.
Oh, dude.
Those are a meal just in themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Potatoes are so good.
Yeah. No,
Owen, how are the potatoes?
bells. Amazing.
Poppy,
Awesome.
got the birthday boy and birthday girl down here.
The best yet.
Jack,
A fly.
Jack, how's your hot dog in your applesauce? Oh, there's a fly. Yeah, you're right.
He's telling you the flies like it.
Jack, can you say delicious?
Delicious. It's a fire, Poppy.
Yeah, there's a fly.
You got rid of it.
He won't hurt
Fly.
anything. He won't
Yummy
eat
in the
much.
tummy.
That is messed up.
So here
Pull the bottom off.
is the cupcake, and I'm going to show you. Owen says don't you dare, but I'm going to show you my favorite way to eat a cupcake. You take the bottom of the cupcake off, and you put it on top of this, and then you have the perfect portions of perfect ratio. We've got the perfect amount of cake to icing ratio.
That is so wrong.
I'm with Owen. There's some more icing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I eat it that way so I don't get icing in my mustache.
Well, but if you eat it,
It didn't work. You got crumbs in your mustache.
if you just bite it, you don't get this.
It's not a sandwich. It's called a cupcake. You don't eat a cupcake like a sandwich. You don't eat cake like a sandwich.
Right. More
Owen is
icing,
very
the better.
passionate about
Thank
this.
you.
He is.
Sugar speaking facts.
Anyway. You know.
This is how I like to eat it. And so we're gonna get back to our party. So that is it for this video. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Potatoes.